The stigma surrounding mental illness continues to be a concern, with the subject being a taboo topic in some communities. In fact, some mental illnesses can be controlled with chronic medication, while others require continual support and monitoring. Mental health experts emphasize the importance of support to enable sufferers to live more functional lives. To discuss how we can break the stigma of mental illness, we are joined by Dr. Colinda Linde from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. A very good morning, and thank you so much for your time this morning. Obviously, July, Colinda, is Mental Health Awareness Month. I imagine there are a lot of programs that you have as SADAG trying to conscientize people about the different anxieties that exist and the various mental illnesses that we should be aware of. What are those?
Yeah, thanks so much for doing your parts. I firmly believe that knowledge is power. So SADAG has support groups for everything you can imagine. Healthcare workers, people going through loss, support groups for depression, for anxiety. So what I'd suggest is if people have access to log on to sadag.org, and there's a huge list there of counselors as well as support groups. So anything that is causing you stress, anxiety, depression, etc., you will find a support group there.
And collectively, as South Africans in particular, we seemingly are going through a myriad of emotions in as far as stress levels are concerned, with everything that we have to contend with on a daily basis. Livelihoods, losing of jobs, compromised financial statuses, and the list goes on. How do we then destigmatize mental illness in this fashion when we are living in a reality that forces us to really face and look at stress in a different light on a daily basis?
Before COVID, anxiety was around about 3 to 8% of the population. And what we saw at SADAG was that numbers first doubled, people calling in, and we now have 4 times more people calling in every day. So believe it or not, we went from 600 a day to 2,400 people contacting us per day. So you can see that numbers have gone through the roof. And, yes, there is still stigma, but I think there's so much difficulty going on. There is so much anxiety and depression. People are becoming a little bit more familiar. It's not just burnout anymore. It's this person has been booked off because they're depressed. So knowledge really is power. And that's why a program like this morning is so important. So knowledge is where it begins. Nobody chooses to be anxious or depressed. There's a biological vulnerability. And the example I always use is about diabetes. Nobody says, well, what's wrong with your pancreas? Why isn't it behaving? Or, why are you on insulin? You've got to get off that stuff. And yet, when it's the brain, which is another organ, it's allowed to have epilepsy, it's allowed to have tumors, but it's not allowed to have a chemical problem, just like a diabetic has a chemical problem. So I'm really hoping that all of us, we stop being bystanders and that we actually start demonstrating through our speech, through our actions, that your brain is an organ like any other. And it can have a problem. It can have a serotonin problem, a dopamine problem, just like the diabetic has a pancreas problem, insulin problem. So I would like to say that to everybody who's watching this morning, don't be a bystander. Work with your own stigma or, your own perceptions and then start to verbalize, model that, because we're all in this boat together. We're all in this ocean together.
What should our response be, doctor, if someone comes to me and says, I have a problem and the problem is mentally related? How should one respond without aggravating the next person who's just come to confide?
Yeah. Look, I think it would be amazing if somebody does come to confide, because often, say in a work context, the manager has to be the one to say, you don't quite seem like yourself. So if somebody does confide, first of all, that means that they either trust you or that they are not coping to such an extent that they've just spilled it out. But either way, you're the one that they've told. And so you don't have to diagnose and you don't have to treat. But all you have to do if you want is to listen and to support and then to encourage. So support is incredibly important. Just there's a lot of research that shows that when you have support, you're more likely to get help. So even if you're not this person's friend as such, you are still a human being, as are they. If you don't know what to say, you can say so. Or you can say, gosh, that sounds rough. Let me see, let's look together. Where can we get you some help? And this is where SADAG comes in. We have so many helplines. If you go on the website, they're free resources. So your job is not to diagnose or to treat. It's just to listen and to encourage to get the help.
We appreciate that, Doctor. Obviously, tomorrow is PTSD Awareness, which runs until the 9th of July. What else is coming up inside this month that we need to be aware of?
We're going to be focusing on all aspects of mental health. So PTSD is the first one. And we're also going to be looking at men and mental health, because the suicide rates in men, especially below 50, are climbing. And, that's just one example. But we're going to be covering all sorts of things over the month. We're going to be talking about panic. I'm doing that through July. And then we'll be talking about depression in children. So we'll be covering all of it. And it will be on our Facebook Fridays. And if you go to the sadag.org website, you'll see a full list of what's coming up. So please do join us. Even if you're not going through something like that, there is somebody around you going through something. 1 in 3 South Africans are dealing with a mental health issue right now. And there is one psychologist per 100,000 people and one psychiatrist per 300,000 people. So we're all just going to have to get each other going, support where we can.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time this morning. That's Dr. Colinda Linde from the South African Anxiety and Depression Group, and you can find them online. That's sadag.org.